Sunday Night Football. Picking right up where they left off in last year's AFC Divisional round, we've got the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Buffalo Bills in the first Sunday Night Football game of this 2025 season. Two of the hottest teams in the AFC, each looking to set the tone for their season with a big win. The Ravens are hungry for vengeance, but who does the simulation think will win? We'll find out, but first, we gotta make our drink a Black-Eyed Annie. So this was kind of a tricky one for me to figure out, mainly because I couldn't really decide what I was going to do for Buffalo's portion. I spent a summer living in Baltimore when I was doing an internship down there, so I've got a good list of drinks that I can do for the Ravens, but Buffalo's was a lot harder. But, you know, that's fine. It's not like I've got another 4 primetime games that I have to figure out something for. Anyways, while I was doing research, I did come across a little cocktail called a Niagara Falls. So Niagara Falls, much like the Kansas City ice water from last episode, doesn't have any sort of real definitive origin story behind it. It's just a drink that'll come up if you Google Niagara Falls cocktail. But it does get its name from being topped off with ginger ale. And theoretically, the bubbles coming off of the drink from the ginger ale is sort of like the mist coming off of the falls. So it's a connection to Buffalo at the very least. It's a pretty simple drink. The spec is just vodka, orange liqueur, and lemon juice, which is then topped off with the ginger ale, as I previously mentioned. It's supposed to be served in a champagne flute, but I really think you can enjoy it in any glass. The champagne flute, because it's got a nice narrow rim, will just sort of maximize the effervescence of that ginger ale, make it really nice and bubbly. Now, Baltimore's representative, the Black-Eyed Susan, has a much stronger connection to the city, being the official, unofficial cocktail of the Preakness Stakes. So you likely know about the Kentucky Derby, or at least have heard about the Kentucky Derby, this big horse race that everybody sort of remembers is happening like the day before it happens, and then immediately goes back to forgetting all about. Well, the Kentucky Derby is the first race of the Triple Crown, which is this series of 3 horse races across the US. For some reason, these old money sports like horse racing, tennis, golf, they love doing these like competition circuits around places. But anyways, the Preakness Stakes is the second race of the Triple Crown, and it's held at the Pimlico Racecourse in northwest Baltimore. So the Kentucky Derby has the mint julep as its official drink, and the Preakness Stakes, not wanting to feel left out, came up with the Black-Eyed Susan as their sort of official cocktail for the race. Like any good cocktail history, the exact specifics around, who created the drink and where is a bit murky, but for this one, I can conclusively say that it was first created in 1973. The sort of core spec for this drink was, give us something that'll be nice and fancy for us to serve, but that we can also serve to crowds of 100,000 plus. So it's been a sort of flexible drink since its original creation. The actual spec has drifted a lot over the years, and every person you go to for a Black-Eyed Susan recipe is going to give you a slightly different recipe. The core of it is vodka and orange juice, which gives the drink its sort of distinct sunflower color. But from there, you've got sort of infinite options for what you can do to the drink, all right? There's some that do add an ounce of rum or bourbon, some add triple sec or elderflower liqueur, some use lime juice, some use pineapple juice, others use sour mix. The combinations are literally infinite. The only other mandatory ingredient in this drink is the garnish, which gives it this is sort of the eye of the sunflower. All right, as you've probably noticed, we have a lot of flexibility in this mashup. But before we get to the drink itself, you're probably wondering about the name. Who is Annie? Why is she in the drink's name? And is she okay? Annie, are you walking? Are you walking, Annie? Are you walking? So Annie, in the context of this drink, refers to Annie Edison Taylor, aka the first person to survive a trip over Niagara Falls in a barrel. She made that trip in 1901, and was basically doing it as like a publicity stunt to scrounge up enough money for her retirement because she was 63. All right? if you ever feel like you're too old to accomplish something, she went 163 feet in a barrel at age 63, all right? You can accomplish anything. All right, history lesson over, back to the drink itself. I knew that the vodka and the orange juice were going to be non-negotiable parts of this drink, as well as the ginger ale topping it off. But from there, it was really sort of going through this infinite list of Black Eyed Susan recipes and picking out sort of supporting cast elements that would work well to accentuate the flavors of that sort of core trio. So what I ended up deciding on is Elderflower Liqueur and Orange Liqueur. I could have used a triple sec, but instead I want to use this dry curacao just because I think the Elderflower Liqueur is bringing a lot of sweetness to it, and I don't want to get sort of too sweet on this drink. So anyways, start building this. Into our shaker, we are going to do 1 ounce of vodka, comically large vodka bottle right here, 1 ounce of our orange juice, gotta get that nice orange color in there, 1 ounce of our dry curacao. Again, you can use triple sec for this. It's really gonna come down to sort of what you have on hand and how sweet you want it. Triple sec is, you know, famously a little bit sweeter than dry curacao, but, you know, ultimately, end of the day, use whatever on hand. They'll both work. And then 1/2 ounce of our elderflower liqueur. This is really cool stuff. It is going to pop up in future videos. And it's not like super expensive, so it's a pretty easy thing to, you know, grab, add to your home bar, and really lets you do some pretty funky stuff with it. It's a sort of light, floral, kind of exotic citrus flavor to it that goes really well with a lot of things. So then we're gonna add our ice to that, give it a quick shake. All right. Strain that into our waiting coupe glass. Finally, not using a highball for once. Although again, like I said, you could certainly serve this in a highball or even a champagne flute. It's all just gonna sort of depend on how much bubbles you like and how you want them to feel. Because we are topping this off with about 1.5 ounces of our ginger ale. Look at that, nice and bubbly. And of course, for this one, we absolutely must include our garnish. So we got the cherries. I'm going to cut a little orange wedge to go on as a garnish. Wonderful. All right, and that right there is our Black-Eyed Annie. Let's have a taste of this. We got a pretty aggressive wash line set up here, so be very careful. Ooh. Oh, that's very bright. That is a drink that tastes like sunshine. It's only 1/2 ounce of the elderflower liqueur, but it really does come through. You get those sort of floral, flowery notes, very delicate, lots of sort of like yuzu notes in there as well. That sort of like exotic citrus. I think that's pulling a little bit as well from the dry curacao. Yeah, because the dry curacao isn't just straight orange juice. I think it's got some other notes in there. Ooh. Oh yeah, that's lovely. I probably could have done a little bit more ginger ale. We're getting a little bit off spec, but it would be interesting to do it with ginger beer instead of ginger ale to get more of that sort of ginger bite in there. Yeah, you could also certainly do gin if you wanted to sort of up the floral notes in there, you know. The vodka is just sort of there to be a base, just to get us up to a decent proof. But if you love gin and you love the floral notes, try adding it to this drink. Well, that is simply fantastic. And now, let's get into the simulations.
Alright, the Bills got off to a hot start in this simulation, marching all the way down the field before Josh Allen connected with Khalil Shakir to give the Bills an early 7-0 lead. Meanwhile, the Ravens got off to a slow start, going scoreless in the first quarter, but this seemed to just be lulling the Bills into a false sense of security. After going down 10-0, Lamar Jackson connects with Zay Flowers for a huge 52-yard touchdown. The Bills responded by playing the possession game, controlling the clock and gradually marching the ball down the field. That is, at least until this 3rd and 3 with 2 minutes left in the first half. Scanning and seeing nothing, Josh Allen takes off before he's leveled by Trenton Simpson, which knocks the ball loose and gives the Ravens back the ball with 2 minutes and 3 timeouts remaining in the first. And while the Ravens would march all the way down to the red zone, they would ultimately be stopped short, forcing them to kick a field goal as time expires, leaving both teams tied at 10 apiece going into the second half. The Ravens continued to build on this momentum in the second half, with a play-action pass on the very first play, finding a wide-open Rashad Bateman on the deep post, which he takes all the way in for the 70-yard touchdown. Now, this next clip is nowhere near as flashy as that last one, but I had to include it because it just makes me laugh, as the pocket holds up so well, giving Josh Allen 5 seconds to throw and enough time to enjoy a nice 3-course meal. Following that is what I think might be the toughest catch we've seen so far in this series, as Josh Allen, stepping up in the pocket, delivers a dart to Elijah Moore, who somehow hangs on to that ball. After that incredible catch, the Bills decided to return to their ground game, handing the ball off to James Cook, who sheds the tackle right here, picking up the first down, and then 2 plays later, toughs it out again, sneaking through defenders to pick up the touchdown. The following possession for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson hits Rashad Bateman on a 5-yard in, who then somehow breaks 3 tackles and starts peeling away from the Bills defenders, finally being chased down at the 5-yard line. That brings up 1st and goal from the 5-yard line, and you already know what the play call is going to be. Put the ball in Derrick Henry's hands and let him take it in for a touchdown. Sadly, Buffalo's offense decided to sputter out at the worst possible time, which is perhaps best exemplified by this huge Roquan Smith sack, where he was completely unblocked. Now, the Bills would get in range for a field goal, but, well, I'll let a voice from the past take this one.
The snap is good, the ball put down, the kick is up and no good! Wide right! Wide right!
Finally, with less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Lamar Jackson hits Zay Flowers on the wheel route, putting the dagger in this game and getting revenge for the playoffs. Now, as you saw, this game was much closer than the final score makes it appear, but a decisive win nonetheless for the Ravens. Obviously, both of these MVP caliber quarterbacks had incredible games, but Lamar really played out of his mind in this one. Perfect passer rating, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, very reminiscent of his games against the Bengals last season. Josh Allen, a single yard short of 300 passing yards with a single touchdown. A great game, but not great enough to get the win in this one. In contrast, this was a relatively quiet rushing game, though not for a lack of trying out of both teams. James Cook had a solid performance, putting up 61 yards and a touchdown on 17 carries. However, Derrick Henry really struggled. 10 carries for only 25 yards would be his worst game since coming to the Ravens by 20 yards. And perhaps it's due to how exceptionally well he was passing the ball, but very muted rushing numbers for Lamar nonetheless. Finally, the ever-chaotic receiving stats, where we see a mix of perfectly reasonable and completely inexplicable. On the Ravens side, things make sense. Zay Flowers, 6 receptions for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very good day at the office and befitting of his wide receiver 1 status. Mark Andrews gets 5 receptions, and Rashad Bateman has a high leverage game with 4 receptions for 156 yards and a touchdown, which is actually pretty similar to the game he had against the Buccaneers last year. On the Bills side, what the fuck? Dawson Knox, current tight end 2 on the depth chart behind Dalton Kincaid, 6 catches for 97 yards. Elijah Moore, currently at wide receiver 4, and not even in the Monte Carlo sim when I ran it, also had 6 catches for 37 yards. Meanwhile, Keon Coleman, their theoretical wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 1 depending on how the season goes, 0 catches on 0 targets. It's a fat goose egg, gang. Meanwhile, the Monte Carlo stats are again more pessimistic, which makes sense considering the absolutely insane games these quarterbacks had. Again, we see a similar trend where despite devaluing the quarterbacks, it has far more faith in the running backs, projecting 78 rush yards out of Derrick Henry. Interestingly, this is the first time the Monte Carlo sim and our Madden sim have disagreed on a winner, projecting an 18-17 Bills victory. The most common outcomes were a 14-14 draw or a 21-14 Bills victory. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the bright and floral Black-Eyed Annie. If you decide to make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.